end up being direct job loss. But because the economy has suffered, it also means that we're not going to be driving down unemployment as quickly as we should.
Are you willing to see a bunch of first responders lose their job, teachers laid off? Air traffic controllers and airport security will visit hardship on a whole lot of people. Seniors, middle-class families scramble to find child care for their kids, flu vaccinations and cancer screenings. A bad idea. A bad idea.
The sequester was the administration's idea.
They were President Obama's idea.
The so-called sequester was Obama's idea in the first place. He signed it into law.
The president's part of the sequester. The White House recommended it, frankly.
I guess I have a different point of view.
That's not surprising.
I'm struck by this because the polls that I've seen indicate pretty clearly that when people are asked who's to blame for this catastrophic situation in Washington, they say it's the Republicans.
Catastrophic? We're talking about a minuscule amount of money, 1/2 of 1% of the economy, that's going to somehow throw us into recession. Catastrophic effects on the country, that's ridiculous. It's going to have some effect here in the Washington area because there'll be furloughs of people who work for the federal government. But remember, the Washington area has prospered in this recession as the rest of the country has suffered because all the money ends up in Washington, gets spent here, and people here did extremely well. Outside of the country, it'll have a negligible effect, except if the president and the administration decide to make the cuts happen in a way that will cause the most disruption. So, for example, TSA, air traffic control, because you want to make people upset so they get angry at Republicans. There is a solution to that issue which can be done in an hour next week, not in a day, in an hour, where you give the administration discretion on how to move the money around. If you do that, you don't have to cut a single agent of TSA, a single air traffic controller. You can postpone one of these investments in infrastructure or algae or any other stuff you want, or electric cars or cylinders. So that's what you would do rationally, and you would continue the cuts what the country needs. As an aggregate amount, this is a trivial amount of money. It's 2 cents on the dollar of what the federal government spends. We're drowning in debt, and you're telling me that if you cut 2 cents, we're going to have a catastrophe?
It's going to be tough to make any cuts if you can't do that. But to the other point, Republicans also don't want to give that power of the purse over to the administration, and they're not willing to do that.
Well, they should.
I mean, listening to all the Republicans I've talked to about transfer authority, they're not doing it. So it's the same way.
It's a mistake on their part.
Listen to Ray LaHood, the transportation.
Are occasionally wrong.
Every week, viewers vote for your choice online, and this, our quick Friday lightning round. This week, fracking won with 41% of the votes. That's where we start. A big battle between New York and Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, Charles, is thriving economically. New York, not so much. There's concerns environmentally.
And New York is losing out because of ideological rigidity here. The overwhelming evidence on the fracking technique is that it is benign. Lisa Jackson, the former head of EPA, was asked about this about a year and a half ago in Congress, and she said she could not think of a single case where it had any effect on water. Water is the real issue. It's been around 60 years. There is overwhelming evidence that it's safe. Winner Argo for Best Picture. You heard it here last, probably. It's a consensus pick, I think. Loser is, I would agree, Jesse Jackson Jr. And the tragedy is this is a man of great talent and promise, and he sold his soul for a Rolex watch. It doesn't get sadder than that.
You guys whipped through that lightning round. I mean, you whipped through it.
Let's go back to that argument we were having before.
I'll never make it to the end of the show.
Wait a minute. You mean, wait, Charles is famous for filibustering. And we've upset you by finishing early.
Early. You finished early.
As I said, so much air, so little time.
You never let some of us talk about drones and fracking.
I know.
Drones, I agree with
All right,
Juan.
well, give it a shot. Drones.
Drones give me the willies, these drones, because of it. It's Big Brother who's watching. I mean, the opportunity for misuse is great.
Drones ought to be used in Yemen, but not over the United States. It's the last thing you want, a drone hovering over your house. Obviously, it's not going to be a weapon, but for looking into your life, there's enough of that going on right now. In extreme cases, perhaps, but you probably have a judge and a court order before you should have a drone over your head.
Judge Napolitano would be proud of you, Charles.
This has been a Sunfish production.